You are poor because you were taught to be good. While you're trading your life force for a steady paycheck and the comfort of moral superiority, the architects of wealth are following a 500-year-old blueprint written in blood and cold pragmatism. Niccolò Machiavelli didn't care about your hard work. He cared about your leverage. If you still believe that escaping poverty is about grinding harder, you've already lost the game before it started. There is a specific, predatory formula for financial dominance that requires you to kill the version of yourself that craves approval and start moving in the shadows. Most people will find what I'm about to say repulsive, and those are the exact people who will stay broke until the day they die. But if you can stomach the brutal reality of how power actually functions, you will understand why your virtue is your prison, and the one fatal mistake that destroys every new winner the second they finally start to break free. You've been lied to about why you're broke. The world tells you to be patient, work hard, and play by the rules. But Niccolò Machiavelli would look at your bank account and tell you that's exactly why you're failing. Poverty isn't a lack of cash, it's a failure of strategy. You are trading your obedience for a false sense of security, while the architects of wealth move in the shadows. If you want to escape the bottom, you have to stop being good and start being effective. Today, we are stripping away the moral traps that keep you stagnant and revealing the brutal Machiavellian blueprint for leverage, silence, and power. Most people will watch this and feel uncomfortable. The few who finish it will finally understand how the game is actually played. It's time to kill the version of yourself that seeks approval and become the version that attains control. Let's begin. Look at your life. You've done exactly what you were told. You stayed in school, you avoided trouble, you checked the boxes, and you waited your turn. And where has that gotten you? You are exhausted, undervalued, and statistically one major life crisis away from total ruin. This isn't a coincidence, it's a design. Machiavelli understood something that modern gurus are too terrified to tell you. The rules of ethics are the chains of the masses. While you are busy being loyal to a corporation that would replace your entire existence in 48 hours if you drop dead, the architects of wealth are practicing virtue, not the virtue of a saint, but the virtue of a predator. They see the world as a chessboard of resources, while you see it as a community of friends. You are playing a social game. They are playing a power game. Every time you prioritize being liked over being leveraged, you are signing another year of your life over to the creditors. You think your good heart is an asset. In the realm of wealth, it is actually your greatest liability. But here is the part where your brain is going to fight back. You think the solution is to find a better job or a nicer boss. You think if you just find the right opportunity, your goodness will finally be rewarded. Here is the brutal truth that will make your skin crawl. The problem isn't that the system is broken. The problem is that the system is working perfectly, and it has successfully convinced you that your poverty is a badge of moral honor. You aren't broke but honest. You are simply a player who has been handed a rulebook for a game that doesn't exist. To win, you don't need more money. You need a total psychological assassination of the person you currently are. Think about the virtuous path you've walked. You were taught that if you just provided enough value, the market would eventually notice. You were taught that reliability is a gold standard. But in the cold, calculating eyes of power, reliability isn't a virtue, it's an asset to be harvested. You are a predictable variable in someone else's equation. While you are worrying about your credit score and your reputation at the office, the real players are operating on a frequency you can't even hear. They aren't looking for fairness. They are looking for the throat of the market. The great deception is the idea that wealth is built on a foundation of incremental gains and good behavior. It's not. It's built on the calculated seizure of opportunity, often at the direct expense of those too timid to claim it. You've been conditioned to wait for permission, to wait for a promotion, wait for a lucky break, or wait for the right time. Machiavelli would tell you that the right time is a myth sold to the sheep to keep them in the pen. Fortune, he famously wrote, is a woman who must be taken by force. But here is where the narrative breaks. You've been told that the reason you haven't succeeded yet is because you lack the skills or the network. You've been led to believe that you just need one more certification or one more productive morning routine. Stop. Look closer. The most successful people you know aren't the most skilled. They aren't even the hardest working. In fact, many of them are objectively less talented than you are. The difference? They stopped trying to be the best version of a servant and started being the worst version of a master. Your integrity isn't a moral choice. It's a cage built by people who need you to stay exactly where you are. The cage works because it doesn't look like a cage. It looks like an Employee of the Month plaque, a minor raise, and the toxic pride of being the hardest worker in the room. You trade your lifeblood for their applause. But applause doesn't buy your freedom. The architects of wealth don't want validation. They want equity. They want control. And there is a specific, ruthless mechanism they use to ensure you never get it. That mechanism is the illusion of meritocracy. You are conditioned to believe that if you shovel enough dirt, someone will eventually hand you a gold mine. It's a lie designed to keep you shoveling. The elite don't dig. They own the shovels, and they buy your time for a fraction of its true worth. If hard work is a trap, what is the actual currency of power? Leverage. Machiavelli knew that power isn't granted to the righteous. It is seized by those who position themselves where they cannot be ignored. You don't win by doing more of what you're told. You win by acquiring the exact asset the market desperately needs. But to build that leverage from the bottom, you must violate the most sacred rule of modern society. You have to stop being authentic. Transparency is a massive vulnerability. When you announce your goals, your struggles, and your next moves, you aren't being genuine. You are handing the world the exact blueprint to sabotage you. Moving in silence is a survival imperative. But the moment you finally shut your mouth and start building real leverage in the shadows, you will trigger a psychological trap that destroys almost everyone on the verge of breaking free. That trap is the guilt of ascension. The second you stop playing the victim, your subconscious panics. You've been conditioned your entire life to bond with others over shared misery. Complaining about the boss, the economy, the unfairness of it all, that was your social glue. When you start building real leverage, you lose your membership to the club of the oppressed. You quickly realize that your closest peers don't actually want you to succeed. They want you to struggle just enough to validate their own inaction. But surviving that realization exposes a much darker reality about the people you trust the most. They will weaponize your history against you. They will call you selfish. They will say you've changed. Let them. Machiavelli famously warned that men will more quickly forgive the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. Translation? People hate losing what they feel entitled to, and your circle feels entitled to your mediocrity. If you stay behind to comfort them, you drown with them. You must sever the emotional umbilical cord to your past. But cutting ties is merely a defensive move. To actually dominate, you have to master the one offensive tactic the elite use to multiply their power overnight. You must master asymmetric positioning. You stop fighting on their battlefield, while the masses compete for a tiny raise by bleeding out 60 hours a week. The Machiavellian player manipulates the perception of scarcity. You don't make yourself more useful. You make yourself irreplaceable. You isolate a specific skill, a critical relationship, or a piece of gate-kept data, and you starve the system of it until they pay your ransom. You don't ask for a seat at the table. You own the chairs. But acquiring this level of leverage introduces the most lethal paradox of the entire wealth game. The paradox of power is that the moment you attain it, you must immediately pretend you are powerless. The greatest monarchs disguise their iron fists in velvet gloves. If you flex your new leverage, you become a target. You incite envy. You provoke the exact system you just conquered. True architects of wealth don't buy designer clothes or flash their wins. They buy invisibility. They project total humility while quietly holding the detonator. You smile, you nod, and you silently control the board. Yet, mastering this silent control forces a final terrifying question about who you are actually becoming. You are becoming the villain in their story, and you have to be entirely okay with that. When you finally strip away the desperate need to be perceived as a good person, what remains is terrifyingly efficient. You no longer react, you calculate. You no longer hope, you execute. But staring into this new reflection reveals a chilling realization. The empathy you thought made you noble was actually the exact leash keeping you broke. Severing that leash introduces you to the highest law of the elite, ruthless utility. You must start looking at every relationship, every habit, and every obligation through a singular, freezing lens. Does this give me leverage, or does it bleed my energy? If it bleeds you, you cut it. No apologies, no closure. You surgically remove the emotional parasites disguised as peers and the distractions disguised as duties. But wielding this scalpel triggers a psychological withdrawal that ruins most rising players. You will step into the abyss of isolation. Suddenly, your phone stops ringing. The weekend invites dry up. The comforting noise of your old life goes dead silent. Most people panic right here. They rush back to the warmth of mediocrity because the coldness of ascension feels too lonely. They fail to realize that this silence isn't a punishment. It's a profit margin. Isolation is the exact environment where leverage is forged. Without the constant drain of other people's emotional baggage, your focus becomes dangerously weaponized. You start seeing the invisible strings pulling the market. You finally have the bandwidth to build the very system that will capture your wealth. But the second you start pulling those strings, you are going to face a completely different threat. A hidden adversary that no amount of Machiavellian strategy can easily prepare you for. That hidden adversary is the system's immune response. The moment you start generating real leverage, the matrix doesn't try to crush you. It tries to buy you. You will suddenly be offered the exact promotion you begged for 3 years ago. You will get the sudden influx of praise, the new job title, the illusion of prestige. This is the golden bribe. The system recognizes you are no longer a sheep, so it offers you a premium stall in the barn. Most rising players take the deal. They trade their newly forged leverage for a high-paying salary and the comfort of a rival. And the second they accept it, their Machiavellian ascension dies. They don't own the board. They just became a more expensive pawn. To actually break the cycle, you must look at the golden bribe and feel nothing but disgust. You have to reject the system's ultimate validation. Why? Because the money they offer you to stop building your own empire is just a fraction of what your leverage is actually worth. You are being paid to abandon your threat. But rejecting the bribe initiates the most dangerous phase of the entire game. The moment you say no to their upgrade, you declare open war on the architects of wealth. You are no longer just a quiet anomaly. You are an active competitor. They will immediately pivot from trying to buy you to trying to starve you out before you can solidify your position. To survive this siege, you have to transition from defensive isolation to offensive extraction. You need to weaponize the one critical asset the elite cannot print, regulate, or steal. And it happens to be the exact thing you have been blindly giving away for free your entire life. That asset is your predictability. The architects of wealth thrive on the fact that your reactions, your fears, and your desires can be calculated by an algorithm. You have been giving away the blueprint of your mind for free. To stop the siege, you must become a ghost. You don't just move in silence. You move in contradictions. You become a black hole where the system expects a beacon. When they cannot predict you, they cannot control you. This leads to the one fatal mistake that destroys every new winner the second they break free. The hunger for redemption. After you've clawed your way out, after you've used the cold Machiavellian blueprint to secure your leverage, a part of you will want to go back and explain yourself. You will want to use your new wealth to buy back the moral high ground. You will want to be seen as the good person again. This is the death knell of power. The moment you seek the approval of the people you left behind, you hand them the leash. The 500-year-old formula written in blood is not about cruelty. It is about total psychological sovereignty. It is the realization that virtue is a luxury for the protected, and poverty is the tax paid by the obedient. You have killed the servant. You have survived the isolation. You have rejected the golden bribe. Now, you must own the crown without apology. You are no longer a resource to be harvested. You are the architect. You are the variable that cannot be solved. The game hasn't changed, but for the first time in your life, you are the one holding the deck. The final truth is the one you've spent your entire life avoiding. The game was never rigged against you. It was built to exclude the version of you that currently exists. You were looking for a way out, but the exit isn't a door. It's an execution. You had to kill the person who valued being right over being effective. You had to bury the good worker who believed that effort equaled equity. The specific, predatory formula for financial dominance isn't found in a spreadsheet. It's found in the absolute rejection of external validation. When you stop asking the world for permission to exist, the world starts paying you for the privilege of your presence. This is the moment of total psychological sovereignty. You don't look back at the people you left in the pen to explain your success, because you realize that your survival was never their concern. Your virtue wasn't a badge of honor. It was a tax on your potential. By shedding it, you haven't become a villain. You've become a ghost in a machine designed to harvest the obedient. You now hold the only leverage that matters, the ability to see the world as a cold arrangement of resources rather than a warm community of friends. The chains are gone because the person who wore them no longer exists. The deck is in your hands. Don't play the hand you're dealt. Burn the house and build your own. This wasn't a lesson in economics. It was an exorcism. You've successfully hunted down and killed the servant living inside your mind. The version of you that craved a pat on the head is buried, and in its place stands something the world isn't prepared for, an individual with total psychological sovereignty. You no longer see obstacles. You see raw materials. You no longer hear noise. You hear the gears of a machine you now control. The blindfold is gone. The chains are dust. And for the first time in your existence, the power doesn't belong to the system. It belongs to you. Own it. Rule it. Build it. The exorcism is complete, but the void you've created is a liability. If you walk away now, the system will detect your silence and attempt to reinstall the old servant's software while you sleep. You have seized the crown. Now you must secure the kingdom. to master the mechanics of silent extraction before the architects realize you've gone rogue, watch this next protocol immediately. Stay in the shadows. Your evolution continues right here. Move now.